What if I was to tell you that you can discover exactly what went into a $1.8 million equity crowdfunding campaign, and if only you understood some of the lessons, steps, tips, and resources which you can use in order to do this, you could also do the exact same thing. So in today's podcast episode, it is an incredibly inspirational interview, but also you're going to hear from an individual who's been able to use crowdfunding in order to propel his brand, in order to actually sell product, in order to also involve his customers in his most recent raise, and also understand what goes into a much bigger picture if you really want to have an impact with your campaign. So today we're talking about equity crowdfunding, and equity crowdfunding is really where you're getting shares. You're giving away shares in your company in order to raise funding from the crowd. This is a little bit different than Kickstarter and Indiegogo, which is more of a pre-sale, but also today's guest did try out an Indiegogo campaign. Unfortunately, it didn't go very well, but then he launched an equity crowdfunding campaign, and oh man, he actually knocked it out of the park when it came to this equity crowdfunding campaign. So in today's episode, we're going to get into all of that, but I talk about this and more on this podcast, the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman, and I am the host of this podcast. I've been in the crowdfunding industry since 2012. I started my blog, CrowdCrux, in 2012, and then the podcast in 2015. I also have a YouTube channel as well, which you can search out if you search my name. My mission is to educate the world, to uplift people when it comes to their knowledge of how to actually accomplish some of these goals. And I do that through my books. I do that through my blog articles. I do that through my podcast, bringing on guests like this so that you can also be a fly on the wall and hear exactly what they do when it comes to raising funds successfully. And I also do that with my free courses and some of my different programs that I have available out there. So one of the programs which to me is one of the most needed right now is really how to actually launch a campaign with an equity crowdfunding platform. How do you raise investment capital from the crowd? And not do this in a small way, but I mean in a big way. If you're trying to get your startup off the ground, one of the things that's constraining your growth and almost chokeholding you is not having access to the capital that you need to expand, to hire the right people, to plow into investments into advertising and marketing and really growing your actual product as well, R&D, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to learn more about how you can use equity crowdfunding in order to raise capital from the crowd through investors, you can go and check out my free course at crowdcrux.com/equity course. That link is crowdcrux, crowdcrux.com/equity course. Just enter your name and email and you'll start getting some emails from me sharing with you exactly what you got to do if you want to get funding using this crowdfunding method. Again, crowdcrux.com/equity course. At the end of this episode, I'll also be sharing with you a couple of more links that I think are going to be very useful for you and some resources. But without further ado, let's get into today's podcast episode and discover how this entrepreneur was able to go and raise $1.8 million with an equity crowdfunding campaign. And it's coming up right after this. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Today we are speaking with the creator behind a campaign that has raised over $1.8 million on StartEngine for redefining human. And this is a really cool, honestly, the world's first multi-touch sensing bionic hand. Really cool technology, cutting edge prosthetic. And we are lucky enough to be speaking with one of the creators behind this campaign. Aadeel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Salvador.
Definitely, man. Maybe we can get started. You can just tell the listeners a bit about your incredible bionic hand, which you've invented, and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my company, PSYONIC, we developed the Ability Hand. It's an advanced bionic hand that's the fastest on the market, the first to provide users with touch feedback, and it's super resilient to impacts. And one of the best things is that we've actually got it covered by Medicare as well. So we've expanded access from 10% of patients who could afford it to now 75% of patients can get the best bionic hand that's out on the market. And this is something that I've wanted to do my entire life ever since I was 7 years old. And my parents are from Pakistan. I was visiting for the first time, or one of the first times. And that's when I had first met someone with a limb difference. And she was my age, missing her right leg, living in poverty, using a tree branch as a crutch. And that's what inspired me to go into this field and work on advanced bionic limbs that were more accessible than ever.
And how long have you been doing the company now? Since you started, or since you guys got going?
So we incorporated in about 2015 while I was still a PhD student at the University of Illinois. And we've gone through about, I would say, 9 different prototypes of the Ability Hand over those last like 9-10 years. And it's just been an incredible journey of starting with these like open source 3D printed designs that we found online, all the way to this like, FDA registered device that our users are being able to feel their children's hands again, and do things like as crazy as flaming board breaking, or like arm wrestling, or bottle flip tricks.
Yeah, super cool. I mean, going from research to starting your own company, that's obviously a big feat. What made you decide to take the leap in doing that instead of maybe, joining another corporation, or, staying on the research side? Why did you want to do your own thing?
Yeah, and so the original plan was for me was to actually become a medical doctor, and so I was a pre-medical student at Loyola University Chicago, and I was actually in an MD PhD program at the University of Illinois. But it was while I was doing my PhD that we got the chance to go down to Quito, Ecuador, and we met our very first patient ever, Juan Suquillo, who lost his left hand 35 years prior due to machine gun fire from a helicopter. He was in a border war between Ecuador and Peru and was in the Ecuadorian army. This is part of a much longer story of 2 weeks of all-nighters trying to get this hand to work. And in front of international news stations, Juan said that he felt as though a part of him had come back. And that was because he made a pinch with his left hand for the first time in 35 years. And, at the time, that hand, it was 3 times the size of an average adult human hand, had wires going everywhere, plugging into breadboards, power supplies, the wall, you name it, right? But when he said that, despite all of this, engineering mess that was in front of him, that's when he realized that if I stay in academia, if I just become a straight up MD, go to an academic hospital, then this just ends up as a journal paper. If we want everyone to feel the same way as Juan, we had to commercialize the technology. And that's when PSYONIC was born.
Yeah. So you decided to kind of take the leap there and do something that was a big vision, right? Because you felt like it wasn't going to exist in the world elsewise, I guess. Did you always want to be an entrepreneur? Do you consider yourself an innovator? How would you label yourself?
I never intended to start a business. That was the most interesting thing. And it was I had dinner with one of my medical school physiology professors when I was trying to debate whether to leave medical school or to continue go full force with PSYONIC. And one of the things he told me was that he was like, Aadeel, you can, if you become a doctor, you'll make a really important impact, but that impact will be very local. What you can do with PSYONIC would have a global impact. And that really resonated with me. And that was the goal all along, to have the most impact with these bionic limbs as possible. And it turned out that the best way to do that was to do that through a company, like starting a company to commercialize the technology that we developed in research. And we kind of run the company as an academic research lab, but with the goal being that the products that we develop actually are useful and helpful for patients. But we're still like publishing papers. It's just that everything that we do is geared towards bringing value to our users, as opposed to just, a journal paper, just, a scientific investigation for the sake of doing a scientific investigation. And that kind of, shifted our mindsets a little bit, because we wanted to make that huge impact. So it wasn't necessarily that becoming an entrepreneur was like what I had always envisioned. It's just that it turned out to be the best path forward for making the best impact for our users.
At what point in this journey did you realize that this was the right path to take? Like, when did you really be like, oh, okay, I'm really glad I did that. Like, I'm glad I gave up on the doctor career, right, to pursue this. When was that moment for you so far?
Yeah, I think I don't think it's like one defining moment. I think it's whenever we see our patients use our hands to do something that they didn't think that they would be able to do. So, for example, our first patient in the U.S. was a retired U.S. Army Sergeant, Garrett Anderson, and he lost his hand in Iraq in 2005 due to a roadside bomb. And when he told us that with our hand that he could actually feel his daughter's hand because of the touch feedback, I mean, that's when we realized this is why we do what we do, right? And not just that he's the only one that'll have access to this technology, but because he can do it, everyone who can get this hand, because we've commercialized it, can do the same thing. And we had him do, like I was mentioning, flaming board breaking. And again, it was something that he had never done ever in his life before. And he was like, now he can do this kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And we've noticed that trend a lot with a lot of our users, that it gives them confidence, having a bionic limb in ways that they didn't know they could have before. And that's really what it's all about. And it's those moments that we realize that, yeah, I think we made the right choice in the direction we headed in.
Yeah, definitely. You and the rest of the team, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
So when it comes to that, thinking about starting a company and kind of growing from there, one of the biggest components that I think we kind of gloss over a lot is this idea of like funding, right? And needing to be feeding the beast, right? What has been that like for you, like learning about these different things when it comes to funding the company? I know you're now doing an equity crowdfunding raise. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've learned when it comes to that behind the scenes?
Yeah, absolutely. And so when we've gotten funding from multiple avenues, right? So we previously had a pre-seed round that was just angel investors and VCs, a more traditional raised through a safe note. In particular. And so I believe we raised around 1.4 million on that. And we also got an additional 2.4 million in grants from the National Science Foundation to support, the development and the translation of this from research to an actual FDA registered product that's out on the market. And when we were starting to decide how to do this next round of funding, because our biggest issue right now is that we've got more demand than we can produce. And so we want to scale up our production. It's a good problem to have. And so we moved to San Diego last year. We have a giant warehouse within the new facility where we just got like new machines, like a new CNC machine, a metal laser cutter, so that we can scale this production up. And in order to do that, we needed to raise capital, right? We needed to raise capital so we can up the production and work on some of the new stuff like nerve implants, bone integration, and new versions of the hand, elbows, wrists, legs, etc. Right? And this was around last year when the market was for investing was at its absolute worst in who knows how long, right?
Yeah.
And so everyone is saying VC deals are going to be really, really bad right now. And for us, there were a couple of things that were interesting that were working in our favor towards something like doing an equity crowdfunding campaign. And I was initially very hesitant about doing an equity crowdfunding campaign because we had done an Indiegogo campaign back in 2017 where we were hoping to raise $150,000, and I think we only ended up raising $7,000, right? So for all intents and purposes, that was a failure. We did not meet our goal, and so I was just like, I'm very wary of us doing a crowdfunding campaign again, and this time again we don't raise the funds we need and then we run into problems, right? But this was a very different situation now than it was back in 2017. We actually have a product out on the market. We have we have a much bigger social media presence now than we did then too. In fact, half of our sales actually came from social media because a lot of our users would see, our flaming board breaking video, or me climbing on the roof of my house, dropping the hand 30 feet in the air and it's surviving. I put the hand in a dryer 10 minutes and it survived going in a drop in and lost. We go on like go-kart racing with this. And then when they see that, they're like, how can I get this hand? Because I want to be able to do those similar things. I don't want my hand breaking all the time, which is a huge problem that they'd been having. And so for a medical device company, I mean, half of your sales coming from social media, that's not typical. And so we figured that by doing an equity crowdfunding campaign, we could leverage that as well, that this doubles as marketing for the hand itself so that more users can see this and then get access to the hand. In addition to having people like opening it up to the public to invest in the company as well. And, one of the most beautiful things that came out of this is that our actual users have been able to invest in the company. So they get to be a part of us making the thing for them. And to me, that's just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I would say there is sometimes you have like the most incredible vision and product, but it maybe just isn't the right fit for the type of crowdfunding, right? Because like you mentioned, the Indiegogo maybe didn't go up to your expectations, but then you literally knocked it out of the park, right? With the Reg CF campaign. So it could be, I think that's a really strong learning lesson, but you've also matured a lot as well. And I'm sure your marketing strategy was a lot better, right? When it comes to this one.
Absolutely. And a lot of it came down to the marketing as well, right? And because we had a lot of those video assets, we could just rework them into making, the launch video for the StartEngine campaign. And that worked out really well. And we just didn't have that viral content that we did like
you do seem like, I would say, just to interrupt there, you do seem like you've kind of cracked the code on this viral content, and you do have some really, really interesting stuff. So for people kind of curious, what do you feel like goes behind a video that gets attention or something that, as you say, goes viral? Like, what do you feel like goes behind that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to it being something that's just unexpected, right? And so things like, arm wrestling a bionic hand, right? I mean, that's
super
like,
cool.
Yeah, like who doesn't want to see someone arm wrestling against a bionic hand? Who's going to win, right? And in that video too, we kind of explain like the physics behind it too. Like, what are the advantages that someone with a bionic hand would have? What are the disadvantages they would have as well? And same with like, flaming board breaking and like bottle flipping and things like that. And, there was this moment in around like February or March of this year, where we're in the middle of the campaign. We went to South by Southwest, and the thing is that when we go to those big trade shows and conferences like South by Southwest, CES, we walk around with the hand, and we're like doing live board breaking demonstrations, and like grabbing raspberries to show how you can have like delicate touch, and then we have people control the hand just walking around as well, and when we do things like that, they create these opportunities for creating for content that's really unexpected as well. Mm-hmm. So, for example, when we were at South by Southwest, there's a company called Free Water that's based out of Austin that is hugely viral on TikTok, where they're always posting these videos about handing people a free water, and then the bottle is paid for by the ads that are on the bottle itself. And so we had one of our users who was with us at South by Southwest, Ryan Goodwin. He grabbed one of these free waters, and he has a wrist rotator on his hand that can rotate 360 degrees. So he was like doing a 360 degree wrist rotation with free water that he just got, right, with our bionic hand. And I think on TikTok it got like 8 million views or something, and then Instagram it's like 12 million views. And so that was happening at the same time as 60 Minutes had done an episode with one of our collaborators at the University of Chicago. So this is Sleeman Ben-Smaya's group, where they had done brain implants in one of their patients. And the patient was actually controlling our hand and shook the 60 Minutes host hand just by thinking, because he was using the brain implants to control it. And then they blindfolded him and they touched the fingers on our hand. And he was actually able to say that this is my index finger, this is my middle finger, by stimulating his brain directly. And so that happened at the same time. And simultaneously as well, I was visiting the house of one of like our new friends that we had just met in the community here in San Diego, and they just filmed a video of me just explaining how the hand works, and that went viral on WhatsApp. And I was like, I didn't even know like you could go viral on WhatsApp, right?
I didn't know. Yeah, that's a whole other platform, right?
Exactly. And it was in particular in the Pakistani Muslim community, and they were just spreading it through like sharing it with all their family members, and then it went all the way to Canada and Pakistan. My cousins were saying like, oh, I'm getting this video of you like explaining the hand, and it was just like, wow, that's crazy. So like there are these 3 viral events that just happened at the same time, and it resulted in this huge boost in the investment in our company. And so it's just consistently being able to create these opportunities for virality that we just need to be aware of, and we just need to keep pushing that content out there, because the thing is that we don't necessarily know which things are going to go viral and which things aren't. But as long as we keep creating content that has that potential, the probability of one of those things going viral goes a lot higher, right? And so we just had a panel at Comic-Con, at San Diego Comic-Con, where we flew in like 5 of our users, and they talk about their experience in using like a bionic hand and how it's affected their lives. And that was really useful for the community. And we've got some other videos that we filmed that day that we haven't released yet that are going to be a lot of fun, and we're excited to reveal those in the next coming months.
I mean, my friend, your passion is contagious, and you've gone through so many cool tactics there. So just to kind of unpack that, just for the audience a bit. I mean, the first one I would say is creating something worth sharing, right? That people want to share with other people. The other is like using functionality and demonstrating that in interesting ways. I think you've definitely mastered that. Partnering with other people who can then reshare your content and stories. I mean, to me, you are a master storyteller here, not of your own story necessarily, but of curating these stories, right? That people, I think, really resonate with, and that makes an impact. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And the thing is, our users, their stories are all incredible, right? I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to either have been born without a hand or have lost a hand. And to see their perseverance and their, the way that they've gone through their lives, it's inspiring.
If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist, and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist, fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately.
So obviously people are investing because they believe in the vision. The technology is obviously also very cool. One of the things we haven't really touched on is the idea of this market size, and like, what is, if we think about it from a business standpoint, what do you think this is going to be worth someday? Or what is the market potential, when it comes to the robotics industry and, your particular innovation here?
Yeah. And so this is where things get really interesting as well, right? Because the prosthetics and orthotics industry itself, that's globally, it's about a $20 billion industry, right? And the bionic limb segment of that is probably around 2 billion in particular. And so in the US, every 2 to 3 years, insurance will cover a new hand. And honestly, like in 2 to 3 years, our hand is going to be like a million times better than it is even now, right? Just the same way that it's better now than it was 2 to 3 years ago. But the interesting thing here as well is that we've optimized our hands for humans to use. And if you're building a robot to do human tasks, then it makes sense that you use the same things that the humans would use to do those human tasks. And so we've had robotics researchers all over the world, so including NASA, Meta, so Facebook Meta, Apptronic. They've all been using our hands on humanoid robots or robot arms to do tasks that a natural human hand or a human would do with a prosthetic hand even. And that has opened up kind of like the floodgates to this entire new market of just robotic hands that are benefiting from the innovations that we made for the human users, because they were suffering the same problems of like robustness, the lack of touch feedback, water resistance. So
let me get this straight. You maybe didn't intend this, but the primary use is prosthetics, but you also see a grander vision of being able to also enhance robotic technology when it comes to like AI or humanoid robots, like those kinds of things.
Exactly. And I mean, a lot of these companies are talking about, building fleets of these things, like tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of these robots. You multiply that by 2, and that's how many hands you need, right? Or
why not 3?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, or 8, right?
Get an octopus kind of thing going.
Dr. Octopus humanoid robot, right? And so that side, I mean, it's potentially going to be exploding over the next, over the
Huge.
next 5 years or so, right? And what's cool about that too is that if that side does end up exploding, then that further drives our costs down, so that for the human users, they can get a prosthetic hand for cheaper than ever before, because the demand is even higher than it was before.
So for those that are who are not, familiar with this, you're doing something very new, which is a regulation crowdfunding raise. I know, like, traditionally you think of it like investment. People are putting like 50K checks right into a company. How much are your users putting into like a campaign? How much can they invest? Like, what are the ballpark figures there when it comes to that?
Yeah, so the minimum is like $250. So anyone can become an equity owner in PSYONIC for just $250. And a lot of our previous investors and the angel investors in our previous round have gone in on this round as well, putting big check sizes like 25, 50K to 100K in there as well. And so it's been anywhere between the $250 all the way up to 100K.
Very cool. Very cool. So I'll make sure in a second to, ask you about, where people can check this out, but kind of one other question here, on the campaign itself. So in thinking about this, you did your first campaign on Indiegogo, and, putting it another way, like, it just didn't go the way you wanted, right?
Yeah.
Did you prepare for the launch differently with the StartEngine? Like, would you say that your approach was different in preparing for that to go live, or, talk to me just a tiny bit about that?
I think one of the things that helped too was that StartEngine curates a bit more on. They're fairly selective on who they bring onto the platform, right? They want to bring on companies that they know will have the potential of doing very well on the platform itself. And so they had actually sought us out, which was kind of cool, because we were already thinking about it, and then it just so happened that the timing worked out really well for that. And they have, their own internal marketing team and their own internal user base, right? That they can market things to as well. And so that was all different from when we were doing the Indiegogo campaign in 2017. So I think that helped considerably, as well as us leaning. We had a much larger network personally. In 2023 and in 2017, we were much more validated in 2023 and 2017. So a lot of people who didn't necessarily go in on our Indiegogo campaign 6 years ago, believed in us now, because we'd been doing it for 6 years. We brought a product out to market that has all these amazing features for our users, and they saw the potential for all these robotics applications as well. And I think it was just all those like little pieces coming together. There was the marketing element. There was just the validity element. There's like the user base that StartEngine already had element, and working with their marketing team. We had our own marketing consultant and team that we were working with internally that we didn't have in 2017 as well. So we had someone who's running the campaign and handling basically the
logistics,
daily operations of it, right? The logistics of it, in a way that I had to do back in 2017, that I could step back a little bit from that this campaign.
Yeah. So I mean, you had a lot of you surrounded yourself with the right people, it sounds like, and you had a lot of your ducks in a row, right? And you had invested really in, building your network, it sounds like, and kind of building that out.
Exactly. And it took at least, I would say, 3 to 4 months of preparation before we had launched. And usually they recommend like 6 months of preparation. But again, we had a lot of the video assets kind of ready to go anyway. And that's a huge part of it. But yeah, I think being well prepared for it helped quite a bit. And so I guess another thing on that front is that we had investors lined up like prior to the start of the campaign too, just to gather their interest, like our previous angel investors, letting them know that that this is something that we might be doing, and if they're just to see if they're interested. And then when we launched, we were like, okay, now this is an actual thing. You can actually invest.
Got it. Really great advice. Really great tips. I do have 1 or 2 more questions, but before that, where can people go to learn more about your campaign? How long is it going on? Where can they go and check that out?
Yeah, we'll probably be running it until the end of this year, but they can go to psionic.io/invest. And Psionic is PSYONIC.io/invest. And that'll bring them to the StartEngine campaign, and they can join our bionic revolution.
Great. I'll make sure to also include that link in the description. So my next question is really kind of along the line of founder, advice and just kind of understanding your thoughts on that. I think mentality is so incredibly important in values. Do you feel like there are any traits, habits, or mindsets that has really contributed to your success as a founder and doing your own thing?
Yeah, I would probably boil it down to two things. One is grit. So when the lows are low, right? When you only raise $7,000 on an Indiegogo campaign, right? How do you make it through, right? How do you survive? And when we did that, or when we were going through that phase, I think at that December we had like $200 left in our bank account, and I had to make a decision: am I going to return to medical school, or am I going to continue on with Psionic? And we had just received, we found out that December that we'll be receiving our first NSF grant for $250,000, and that was more money than we had ever seen before. And so it was just this low going to this high, and just being able to persevere through those through that roller coaster of a startup. I mean, fortunately, since then, everything has been
growing,
upwards, right? With us raising a total of over 3 to 4 million already over the last 3 to 4 years, and getting the handout to market. We were profitable last year. We did over $1 million in sales, again with a demand that's higher than our supply, right? So all good things that have come from that is because of we had that grit to make it through those tough situations. And honestly, the other part of it is just approaching everything with a sense of gratitude. I'm incredibly grateful that we get to work with such amazing users, that I get to work with such an amazing team that I've had for the last 9 years or so, and as well as grateful to God for being able to let me do something that I've wanted to do my entire life. Not everyone gets those opportunities, and I'm very grateful for that.
I love that. Yeah, really great advice. My final question for you, and we can end on this note. We could either end with a quote that you like. We could end with a final tip for founders on the business side or about crowdfunding, or you could just end with a word of encouragement for other people out there that are looking to bring their ideas into the world.
So one of my favorite quotes, especially talking about grit earlier, was one that was quoted in a video documentary that was made by Legendary Pictures that highlighted one of our early trips going to Ecuador. And the quote was, "When you're going through hell, keep going." And
that's a good one.
Yeah. And that mantra, right? That grit, it really helps you survive and thrive in some of the toughest situations.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Very inspiring, and I look forward to your next campaign.
Thank you so much.
Oh man, was that not the most incredible episode? I took away so many great tidbits and really nuggets of gold, right, when it comes to crowdfunding, whether that's actually building something that's worth sharing, being able to display your functionality for your product in interesting ways, right, telling stories in a way that's compelling so that they actually go viral. There are so many great resources, tips, advice that was given in today's episode. And if you do nothing else, take some action. I would say that one of the biggest values that I have is that not only should you be putting education at the forefront when it comes to learning something new, for example, the crowdfunding industry and some of the tricks of the trade that go into actually launching one of these campaigns, but you also have to have the commitment, the discipline, and overcome that procrastination and sometimes self-sabotage to actually every single week show up, take a little bit of action towards your goals, and move that boulder down the hill so that eventually you can launch a campaign, you can raise a boatload of funding when it comes to your dream, your vision, your idea, your technology, whatever it is that you're trying to do. And then you can go and you can actually use this experience to be able to launch an entire new brand or to grow an entire new brand in an industry. And I would say another big thing is just impacting the world, right? Being able to do that so you can actually do some good in the world, to ethically dominate your niche and make an epic brand and make it a win for everyone who is involved. So if you want a little bit of help when it comes to doing that, I'm going to share 2 resources that I think are going to be useful for you. These are great resources when it comes to really just getting started. The first one is going to be my book, which is the Equity Crowdfunding Explained book, which is available on Audible. I've made it available on Audible so that you can hear me read it with all my passion, my enthusiasm, my excitement, and also really break down a lot of complex topics that are just big in financial jargon, right? That might need to be explained for you to really understand equity crowdfunding. So if you want to learn more, Audible is doing a great deal where you can actually get a free copy of Equity Crowdfunding Explained. All you got to do is sign up for a free trial of Audible. So if you want to learn about that, just go to crowdcrux.com/equityaudio. That link is crowdcrux.com/equityaudio. Again, crowdcrux.com/equityaudio will take you there. In addition, if you'd like a little bit more help beyond just a playbook or beyond just a paint by numbers formula when it comes to that, and you really want to dive in deep, you want to get the right people on your side, you want to assemble a team that's going to help you with this launch, and you're looking for someone who knows their stuff and can kind of go through your entire marketing strategy, tell you what you got to do, what you're doing well, what you're not, tell you more about what you need to do in order to hit some of your KPIs or some of the results which you're trying to have when it comes to funding. I offer intensive one-on-one coaching calls coaching calls with my students, where you can book an intensive coaching call with me. Not only can we go over various questions when it comes to raising money, is this even a good fit for you, but also the strategy that you can use to supercharge your campaign, the things that are working right now that I'm hearing about literally every single week behind the scenes that can really turbocharge your raise. So if you're a startup company and you're interested in doing an equity crowdfunding campaign or using crowdfunding as a part of your strategy to raise funds, go and check out this link I'm about to mention. Fill out a little bit of information on this form, and you can tell me more about what you're trying to accomplish. That link is crowdcrux.com/coaching. That link will take you there. It is an investment to be able to book this call with me. You got tons of people writing in like every single week. So this is a way that we kind of are able to cut down on that. So if you're serious, again, crowdcrux.com/coaching. That link will take you there. That link is crowdcrux.com/coaching. And we can get that call scheduled ASAP. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and I really commend anyone who's showing up every single week when it comes to educating themselves. You're trying to launch something that's going to impact the world, do some good in the world, right? Has a higher purpose in some way. And at the end of the day, we have to think about what is the type of world that you want to live in, right? What kind of world do you actually want to be in? And sometimes in order to, make that happen, someone else isn't going to step up and carry the log and be able to actually do that. Sometimes it's you. Sometimes we need to step up. The world would be such a better place if we just had more people that were willing to step up in helping to build that better vision when it comes to a great world and something that has really cool technology and really great products and really great services and really great stuff that aids our lives. So if you feel like you're that type of person, tune into next week's episode, continue learning. And I'm telling you, dude, I'm so excited if you're willing to take action every single week. Thank you so much. My name is Salvador Briggman, and I will see you next time.